welcome to episode 2 of Vacation Homes 101. I'm Jeff Chase, and
Jeremy Mayer.
we are here today. We're going to talk about occupancy. What do you think about occupancy?
Occupancy is always core. Without occupancy, we don't make any money. So, um, that's a question that's on everybody's minds. Unfortunately, I think the days of buying anything and filling it with IKEA furniture and making money are gone. But for us, to me, in the markets that I work, I see occupancy falling into kind of two categories. You have the larger homes and you have the smaller ones. The smaller homes are more location based, and you need to have good reviews and be providing quality customer service. The larger homes, that's true as well, but you need to really focus on amenities. Um, you know, used to be you could just buy a pool home, throw some lawn chairs in the back, and you do pretty well. But now, if you're not jumping on board with mini putt
So,
putt
where
and
do you
and
typically get your
quality designs and
occupancy
murals,
data from? How do
you're
you
simply not competing.
judge whether
So,
you're doing well or not doing well?
the easiest way to answer that is what does the bank account look like? Um, so somebody that buys a home at 600K that somebody else bought the same home for 300K 6 years ago, it's not the same equation. So you know it's possible to see that 300K home still doing well without the amenities because they have half the carrying costs that the larger home does. Uh, where we see it in our own properties is occupancy rate, and we try to sync that with time of year to balance prices, occupancy rate for a maximizing profitability throughout the year. But I don't think that's a secret to anybody. I mean, everybody's doing the same thing, whether they're planning it and talking about it or not. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I gave it a shot.
No, it's good. So let me ask you, what's bringing occupancy up is we've seen it a lot on the chat boards, and we got the questions about occupancy. Um, do you think that there is so many more properties in market that it's diluting occupancy? Because it seems a lot of people seem to think that's the problem.
I think I think that was part of the problem maybe last year. I forget where I saw those numbers, but I think it was probably over at the Florida Alliance of Vacation Rentals, where they stated that we've lost over 50,000 units here in this past year. So
You, you've
I
gone
think
down 50,000 units.
correct. So I, I think I think it's a little more obvious now to people who are, and I've been saying this for years. You've got the people that are jumping in and performing, building their properties to what the market is asking for, and then you've got the people that are coasting, and increasingly the people that are coasting or were playing at vacation rentals are falling by the wayside, and the people that are bumping up their amenities. It's a common conversation for me where somebody calls me and says, hey, we've had the place for 4 years. We were doing really well year one, year two, year three. It started dropping off, and we're having trouble. And I go, pull up a map of short-term rentals within half a mile of them, and uh, their listing hasn't changed. 4-2 with the pool, and they've got a kids playground that's now 4 years old, and they've got some Costco lounge chairs and a grill that's 4 years old, and they go, we're not booking like we used to. Well, and I can find mini putt putt with a brand new playground and a fresh resurfaced pool and all the load out within a half a mile. Why would I book them? You know, and and then if they are just lowering their price, well, now you've got people that can't afford what they wanted, so they're kind of naturally grumpy anyway, and it starts the downward slide.
So I want to clarify because what you just said is counter, I think, to the implication that's being made online, which is that there are so many more vacation homes in the market that are occupancy has been diluted. But what you just said is completely opposite of that. You guys have lost 50,000 homes.
I think that it contributes to it a little bit, but in not in the way I think it makes more sense. And the data that I'm privy to in sales tends to state the folks that are jumping in and anticipating the market and participating in the amenities arms race, they're still doing very, very well. It's the folks that it worked 3 years ago, why isn't it working now, that are missing the boat and doing the majority of the complaining because suddenly they're having trouble making ends meet. They're selling. I see it every day.
So it's interesting you say that. In the hotel lodging industry, a hotel does a refit, if you will, every 7 to 10 years. I imagine in the vacation home industry, if you have a lot of new product coming into the market that's fresh, it may force you to have to remodel or jump into that arms race, as you call it, to make your property look better sooner than 7 to 10 years. But if you haven't done your property in 7 to 10 years, you are woefully behind.
Absolutely. And again, I see it all the people come to me and they say, well, could you come over and look at the listing? And okay, you go over there and it's 4 years old. The paint hasn't been redone. The tiles chipped. The everything looks grungy. The drill. We've all stayed at those places. If you're staying in short-term rentals, we've all stayed there. Sometimes if we're out in the country or whatever, you don't mind so much. But if you're paying top dollar near the beach, I want it to be fresh and clean, and you should be taking them offline for 2 weeks out of a year for touch up anyway. I mean, back in my restaurant days, all the good restaurants went down in the slowest 2 weeks of the year, usually around Christmas, and painted everything, cleaned everything. We should be doing the same thing in our rentals.
Got ya. So the Orlando market, we do have a lot of new inventory that comes on, but I think it's probably low single digit adjustments. So let's say we have 40,000 vacation homes in the metro area. We may lose 500 and gain 600, but there's not a large enough change in inventory to flex occupancy in this market at all. So it's definitely not occupancy, or it's definitely not demand or availability of units that is creating diminished occupancy. So for our market, and just so you guys understand as the audience, all of our data we are aggregating from visitor and convention bureaus for Florida, for the Clearwater, St. Pete, Tampa area, Orlando, Central Florida, Kissimmee Convention and Visitor Bureau. So that's where we're getting all of our data. They aggregate it professionally, and we have access to it, so that's where we're going to draw it from. Some of this stuff is information that you can find as well. It's not hard to look it up, and maybe we'll do an episode to teach people where to find this in the future. But let me give you a couple data points that I thought were interesting. Are you all right with that?
Sure. Hit me.
All right. So occupancy in general for Florida, and this is measured by load for airplanes or available seats, went down in the fourth quarter for 2025. It sagged in hotels. It sagged in all occupancy throughout the state. Interestingly, Orlando got hit probably the hardest of all the markets. We were down a little more than 4% occupancy during the same time last year. Uh, the West Coast, where you are, I think was flat. Uh,
So you said you were down 4%,
we were down 4% occupancy.
which, 4% doesn't sound terrible to me. And then the other question that I would ask is, historically, don't doesn't Orlando typically fall a little bit during the fourth quarter? We always do.
Well, I'm measuring occupancy compared to fourth quarter last year versus this year,
Okay.
or 24 to 2025. Um, Rate was up a little bit, 1.3%. Rate was up. And this is across all lodging. And the way they get this information, Jeremy, is the TDT uh, revenue. So it's an easy way. You have this many rooms. Uh, this percentage of it is vacation homes versus hotels and timeshares. Uh, so it's when you have all the numbers, it's kind of easy to aggregate. But the good news is that the projection is for us to grow in 2026. Not a lot, probably in the area of 2% growth for the state. Uh, Regions are varying in that. So I think 2026 is going to be sort of similar to 2025 in terms of occupancy. Now, you can definitely improve your occupancy by number one, improving your property, improving the amenities, improving the photographs. Buying a property and sitting on it for 5 or 6 years sounds like it's not being an effective strategy in terms of marketing.
No.
Let me see what else I can dig in here. Uh, so these reports that I pull up the unemployment rate. That's how all the economic indicators is what they're using to determine what 2026 is going to look like. How many people have already booked an airline seat compared to the same time last year? Is that increasing or decreasing? What economic factors are there? One of the things that I thought was really powerful for the vacation home industry is the exchange rate with international markets. Do you guys get a lot of foreign nationals in that area?
Um, they seem to come in fits and spurts, and not nearly what you do. No.
All right. So, as you guys can expect, Canada was a complete bust last year with all the controversy with politics. Canada travel was down 20% in the state. I think Clearwater, St. Pete area gets a lot of that Canadian business.
Yeah. It's funny when people bring up Canadian statistics. we we always get a couple Canadian snowbirds, but not so much that we notice one way or another. And I forget the statistics. I'd have to dig them up again, but the percentage that accounts the percentage of total volume that Canadians are bringing to Florida, it seems to me, and I want to throw this number out there, but I would want to double check it to confirm, but it's like 3 to 4% of total volume. So we miss our Canadian tourists for sure, but it also isn't the catastrophe that we keep getting told that it is. At least that's my observation. And last I discussed those numbers with the Florida Alliance, that was supported. They're definitely down. Canadians are not coming, but that's supported across our listings, and then the data we got from Key Data supported that as well.
So, in 2022, which was kind of the peak, uh, Canadians got 80 cents US to their dollar.
Hmm.
Um, that number climbed to almost 60 cents to their dollar. So that's a
That
pretty
hurts.
big gap. But today, it's headed the opposite direction. So it's becoming far more affordable for Canadians to come here. And according to the load statistic for airlines, the Canadian market's probably going to return pretty dramatically in 2026.
Okay.
The other big market is Great Britain. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
The Canadians that I talk to, granted, is not a tremendous number, but um, many of them are just waiting for their money to improve to return. They love it here. So, and I don't blame them. When my dollar goes further, I travel too.
So in December, they're getting 62 cents for a dollar. So it's still bad, but it's not nearly as bad as it got up to. It got up to be pretty bad. Uh, Again, Great Britain. So Canada is the number one international inbound, accounts for roughly 40% of international travel to Florida. So it'll be good to see that come back in double digit numbers for 2026. The next big one is Great Britain. Um, their exchange rate is pretty good right now. Uh, Let me see what it is. So they're at a dollar. They're at 75 cents in 2025. Uh, $1 equals 75 cents. Great Britain. It's funny that used to be like $1 equaled $1.50 Great Britain. So, but Great Britain numbers are expected to return pretty significantly. But you know what I found very interesting, and I didn't know this, is that the international market for Florida in general is only 10% of our arrivals. So 90%, yeah, I thought that was low because when you're walking around, it seems like everyone is from a different country, at least in this area.
Especially in Orlando. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but it's only so,
Well,
so
that's
the
cool.
US market.
Over here, you just don't. You meet them. I mean, it's not like they're not here, but the bulk of our people are Midwest travelers. People trying to escape St. Louis, um, or what have you. And that's after Panama City and Destin is full.
So I thought this statistic was just synonymous with Americans. Um, According to Americans, travel is a birthright. And 95% of Americans still plan to take at least one trip in the next 12 months. That's a lot of travel.
Yeah. Well, holy cow! You could travel 4 weeks a year and not see America in 10 years, easy.
Well, so it's so funny you say that because the next page I just pulled up, America's travelers remain interested in traveling internationally despite the slight drop in December. Um, Roughly 40% of Americans would love to travel internationally, but we want them to stay here.
Sure. I want them to stay here, stay at my places so it can fuel my international travel. That's what I'm after.
I agree. All right. So, uh, overall, as a summary on at least statistically, we are expected to rebound in 2026 a little bit. Average daily rate is expected to go up roughly 4%. Um, and that's good news. Higher occupancy, higher rates. Um, but you have to make sure, like you said, that your property is attractive. So if you're using a property management company, you live in Canada or England or wherever, and you're using a property management company to manage your home, what's the conversation you have with them?
What's the conversation I have with folks that are using a PM?
Yeah. Like, so I have to make sure my property, my expectations are that rate's going to go up and that occupancy is going to go up. As a property management company, what are you doing to help with that? Or are you saying that don't look at your property management company, look at your home and update it?
So we have kind of scaled back a lot of our offering management for short-term rentals because I've struggled so hard with having that conversation with people. Um, Even when it is very clear to me, even when it is very clear to me that, sorry, uh, even when it's clear to me that the if they invested a little bit of money in the property and in amenities, they would get the bookings. Um, we have found that, if they're already, and if they're already in that spiral when they come to us, I'm less interested in helping them, because the only way out of that spiral is spending money and resolving the issues, and they're already in lockdown mode when they come to us, if that makes sense. But like I said, we have started focusing more on our properties rather than management. So, when when I'm making a statement, I'm making a statement out of uh, two places: either my own properties, or from a real estate perspective when I'm working with investors who are vetting what they're buying. Did that
So
answer
I,
your question?
yeah, it does. So you nailed the frustration. I've been with the management company for X number of years. You already said it started off gangbusters. Over the last 4 years, it has gone down every year to this year. I paid out. I didn't even break even.
Yep.
Um, and I'm frustrated with the management company, so I'm leaving them and I'm looking for a new one. So here's the problem: they've made no money,
Yeah.
they've saved no money,
Yep.
they're they're upset.
Yep.
The reality is that the only way, the number one thing they got to do to get started is to update their home.
Yes. Just as if they were entering the market new tomorrow. Only it's even better than that, because if you bought it 4 years ago, you didn't pay what somebody entering the market is going to pay. That's also a very interesting conversation. The it's extraordinary to me to talk to someone who says, "Okay, I've been in the short-term rental market with this house for 4 years. It's not working for me anymore." Excuse me. And I can pick up the phone and get an investor who is willing to pay more than they bought it for, who's thinks that the numbers are going to work for them to buy it and set it up, because they're already going in with the understanding it's going to be a 5 year minimum to 10 year, and they're investing for that arc, as opposed to just, why isn't the property performing for me now? So my point there is, if you bought it 4 years ago and you were willing to invest, let's just say 40K in minimal touch up and some backyard amenities, you'd be in a far better position than the same guy that's trying to buy it from me when you tell me to bring it to market. But they don't see it that way. They always see it as, well, I've invested this much, it's not working anymore, I'm out.
Let me ask you a question. This is a loaded question. Can someone buy a vacation home today and make money, or at the very least break even?
Without a doubt. Um, Breaking even is should be the bare minimum. Um, the first rule is lose no money, right? So but I see the underwriting team that I'm working with, folks that are willing to pursue the model and put the money into it and develop the amenities in the backyard are seeing consistent good returns through. Again, the plan is always a 5 or 10 year arc. For me, the numbers always make better in a 10-year arc or longer because time forgives much. So, just to throw some numbers out there, if you're paying $500,000 for a home and you put 250 into the acquisition and the build out, and on the low end, if that makes 125 a year, well, you're 3 years into it to break even, and the next 7 years you've bought a home that's now turning 80, 90K, and all those numbers are low. I consistently see better than that. But that's not a bad, when you look at it through that lens, that's not a bad return at all. And indeed, I have a ton of investors willing to buy just in that scenario.
It's interesting because in the Central Florida, Orlando market, there are a lot of people that are making money and breaking even.
Yeah.
But all I ever hear from is people that are losing money.
Yeah. Well, just like in the Facebook groups, you never listen. When I have a party of 8 that checks in for a 2-week stay, and they leave us a bottle of wine and a tip for the cleaner and say, thank you, that was a beautiful stay, we enjoyed ourselves. I don't go to Facebook and say, hey, everybody, we had a party of 8 that paid and enjoyed themselves. Nobody ever goes and posts that. But if I have a party of 8 construction workers who break the granite in the kitchen and, leave stale beer in the living room and leave their dog behind when they check out, boy, we'll post on Facebook about that because it's a story. So all you ever hear about is the issues. You never hear about, and if all of our bookings were parties, well, we wouldn't still be doing this, but nobody ever posts about the people that paid, enjoyed themselves. They always post about the parties. So
Right. I would say, tell me if you agree with this. The vacation home market is not a get in cheap and it's not a get in cheap market. You have to do it the right way.
No. And I think what appeals to people is they can see a easy path to money, but they discount the necessary work.
Well, Jeremy, I know I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. And if you are watching this and you have some specific questions you'd like us to answer, please leave comments for us. I'll sum it up. Occupancy was a little down. Rate is a little bit up. 2026 is going to be better than 2025. Fingers crossed, nothing crazy happens. Yes, you can still make money in vacation homes, or at the minimum, when I say break even, you have a vacation home in Florida that's growing in equity. No, you're not getting positive cash flow, but for a lot of people, that's not what it's about.
Yep.
But I think that's it for us this time. Thank you so much for watching. Jeremy, you got anything to say?
Nope. Enjoyed it as always. Look forward to the next one, and love to hear from anybody with any questions or anywhere we can focus and dive in and help you out. Looking forward to it.
All right. We're out. Thank you.
Have a great evening.